You're listening to Candid Cannabis Conversations, a show where the title says it all. Here are your hosts, Strain Slayer and Blunt Betty.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Candid Cannabis Conversations. I am Blunt Betty.
And I am Strain Slayer.
Thank you so much for joining us on episode 1. Today we are going to get to know each other and let you guys get to know us. I am a medical cannabis patient in the state of Florida.
And I am a medical cannabis patient in the state of Florida as well.
Strain Slayer and I are very opposite people. But yet we kind of merged our lives into this place where we're very similar. But we came from different places in life, I think.
Absolutely.
And we have different experiences that we've brought to the table with us. And saying that, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your childhood or a little bit about your experience with cannabis, whatever you're comfortable with.
I actually grew up in a household that was very anti-cannabis, very anti-drug in general. My parents kind of raised me on the thought that all drugs were equal across the board, so cannabis kind of got thrown in the loop with that. And saying that, I grew up looking at people who used cannabis as lazy, as stoners, as all the stereotypes that the rest of society kind of is pinned on medical cannabis users. It wasn't until out of high school, I'd never even tried cannabis all the way until I was probably about 20, 21 years old was the first time I tried cannabis. Wow. And it wasn't until I had studied the living hell out of it. I actually studied the medicinal properties, everything about it, the chemical structure. I wanted to know how it reacted, and the more I studied, I realized that we had been lied to about what cannabis was. So eventually I tried it myself. I realized that there was no danger to it. I realized it actually did help me a lot with a lot of my ailments and things like that. Since then, I've just continued my studies and just tried to educate myself as much as I can on the plant and spread that knowledge with everyone I can.
When you say drugs, that you grew up and that, cannabis was with drugs and that your parents were anti-drug, were they anti-prescription drug?
They were, yeah.
Oh,
actually.
okay. Okay. Well,
definitely, yeah. My mom was big with essential oils and things like that. It was almost like a hippie lifestyle without the cannabis. So
on the opposite end of the spectrum, I grew up in the 70s and I grew up with hippie parents. They were a little young to be hippies, like full out hippies, but they had the hippie philosophy pretty much. They were certainly pot dealers. I can remember that. I have a lot of experience from the time I was a baby, in my grandma's arms, and she wore a roach clip around her neck and I would hit it all the way up until my current medical experience, which is completely nil, and I'm learning as I go. You think you know a lot about a subject, and then you get into a whole new world and you realize you don't know jack shit.
Times change, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. I guess just to let you guys know, and a little brief history about Strain Slayer and I, is that our history is very brief. We initially met last year in 2018 as, I guess, bud tender. I guess that's just the common term that most people out there would understand outside of the Florida network. Bud tender and customer or patient is how we initially met. And I think virtually we kind of have seen each other on social media a lot and stuff like that. And you came over to do some recording as a guest of mine, and here we are.
I'm really excited, honestly. I was very excited to come on as a guest, but to link up and to put our knowledge and our expertise together, I think it's going to be a great show. I think we're going to be able to reach a lot of patients. So I'm very excited for that.
I'm really excited to get this out here, to share with people what we can give to them. I think that's important. And I think that, so what do we want to share with people? What is it that we want to give to these people? Why should people come back and listen to us?
I mean, I think a big part of it is we both are patients. So we use this medicine every day. We know how it affects us. You're a people person. I like to consider myself a people person. So I try to talk to as many patients as I can. So I think with the collective knowledge and the testimonials that we've heard and continue to hear every day, I think, it's important for people to hear this information because it's real. It's coming from people that are dealing with ailments and are using the same medicine as each other.
When you started doing your initial research as somebody that had been raised in a household that was anti-drug, you have an interesting story of what happened to you.
Yeah, the research, honestly, it opened my eyes so much. I genuinely, I wanted to grow the plant myself and see it in action, and I wanted to study it further. But I was very concerned with the repercussions here in Florida. Anything over an ounce of cannabis in Florida was a felony, and I wasn't willing to have my rights revoked, so I moved out to Colorado.
Wow.
They do have
That's commitment.
It was a journey for sure. I was young. I didn't have many, anything tying me down really other than family here. So they had recreational marijuana passed, just a year or so prior. So I knew I could get out there, get some growing experience, some extracting experience, and just some firsthand knowledge.
So what would you say is the most valuable thing that you brought back to Florida from Colorado?
Honestly, I would say the perspective.
Besides seeds. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Besides the seeds, those are, definitely valuable. No, I would honestly say the perspective that I brought back from Colorado. I knew there was medicinal value in everything, but if I'm being completely honest, I moved out there with some hopes of making money. I wouldn't say I had the same heart that I do now. It wasn't in it as much. But moving back to Florida, I came with a new perspective of why people were using cannabis and how many people were using cannabis and just the real range of ailments that it was touching on. So I think just the perspective that Colorado gave me and changing my mind on cannabis as a medicine, honestly, was probably the most valuable thing I could have learned.
Do you feel like the way that the state of Florida has set up the medical marijuana program has made you more passionate about advocacy, given the fact that it's so difficult for patients to learn as they go? The state has not set it up. The state of Florida has not set it up as an easy journey for patients in any way, shape, or form, especially people that don't have any knowledge about these oils and waxes and butters and all of that stuff. That being said, do you think that has fueled your passion?
When I first got in the industry, it became pretty evident that people didn't really know what they were getting into fully. And that went all the way from the doctors to some of the dispensary associates, and that trickles all the way down to the patients. So that definitely fueled my desire to get out there, start advocating harder, and just trying to really educate people as much as I can.
I'm really excited about I'm excited about the East Coast. I'm excited about new states that don't have medical yet, but they're about to. They voted it in. It's just not quite in the process yet. I think we have a lot of lessons that we've learned. And I know that we don't necessarily have the power to make their leaders, legislators make the right laws. Yeah. Make the legislators write the right laws.
There you go.
But what can we tell these people out here in these other states that are just starting out, that don't know anything, these people that have never used these other, we don't have to discuss that right now, but I think those are one of the things that we really want to bring to the show too.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, those states are going to need a lot of help. And I think Florida had we learned a lot of lessons the hard way. So I think we together, being here firsthand from ground zero, we've seen the mistakes being made. And, hopefully we can at least educate the patients in those states. Like you said, we don't have much political power there, but if we can at least spread some of the knowledge and some of the experience we've gained here, then hopefully we can make their experience a little smoother in those states. That's my goal anyway. I told you a little bit about me and my history, my past. You briefly mentioned that you grew up with hippie parents, as you said. But I was kind of curious as to, as you got older and things like that, how your experience with cannabis progressed to where you're at now as a full medical patient here in Florida. What was that progression like for you?
I had experiences as a child with cannabis that were accidental or whatever, a couple. So those really don't count. But yes, I do have funny stories about those. I started hanging out with a pretty bad crowd when I was 11 years old. And at that time, I started smoking cigarettes and smoking pot and drinking. I was hanging out with a crowd whose parents didn't tell us we couldn't do those things. They almost encouraged it at 11.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a pretty early experience, and I knew right away that I liked cannabis, and I knew that it just connected with me, and I felt like I fit in finally, and that I was normal. Like what other people feel is normal for them is what I finally felt. And I knew that I really did like it a lot. So I was pretty much always a heavy user a heavy smoker, whatever term you want to use,
Sure.
throughout my teen years and throughout really all my life. I never saw it as a medication necessarily. I really didn't, even though I knew that, it made me happy or relaxed, or it just made me feel like my brain connected with other human beings or thought the way that other human beings think.
Sure.
When I was in my 30s, maybe mid to late 30s, my daughter was a teenager, and I didn't smoke in front of her, so I was in my bedroom a lot, and I was hiding from her, spending a lot of time away from her. And who wants a mom that's stoned all the time? And then I kind of reached a point in life where I had been a stay-at-home mom most of my life, and I really needed to get a job outside of the house, and I wanted to work in the airline industry. So I knew that I was going to have to give that up if I was going to work in the airline industry. And I did, and I was there for a few years before I started to get really sick. I started to have a lot of chronic health issues. I started losing a lot of weight. I was having a lot of pain. I was having some heart issues. Multiple different things were going on with me. And I took a medical leave from the airline, from a short-term disability at that time. I started smoking again. And it was thought of more as a medicine at that point. Maybe not hardcore, like there was still some arguments maybe in the house because I was using so much or whatever, spending so much. But yeah, it progressed from there into more of a medical thing, and to where like even my husband recognized that I needed a lot in order to eat. And I was not eating. I got down to 99 pounds. I'm 5'2". I was 175 pounds when before I got sick, and I got down to 99 pounds eventually.
Wow.
Yeah. The insurance company was more than happy to pay for a surgically implanted feeding tube and all the food or liquid that would go into that feeding tube, but they would not pay for Marinol or Sesamet or any of the other
natural.
Not natural, because Marinol is the prescription
Right.
THC, but they wouldn't pay for any of those prescription pharmaceutical alternatives to THC. They wouldn't cover any of that.
Right.
Then we got medical in the state of Florida, and it's just been a roller coaster since then.
So the symptoms, you said you got sick, you started losing weight. That didn't all start until after you had initially stopped smoking cannabis to join the airlines, or was that something you were dealing with previously?
I've always had weird, unexplained health problems, like my entire life. I mean, even when I was a baby, when apparently, of course, I don't remember this, but I was in the hospital and they thought that I had cystic fibrosis. And they tested me for it and they said, no, she doesn't. Throughout my teens, I always had like just really weird, unexplained issues. But yes, everything really cascaded. And really, it started very, very quickly. I just saw my Facebook memories. It was either this morning or yesterday morning. I started in August with the airlines, and it was in January that my daughter was sitting across the desk from me in a room, and she was like, Mom, your pupils are two different sizes. You're wigging me out. And then the next day I was like, oh, maybe I should look that up. And it was like, oh, that's a sign of a stroke or like serious brain damage. Right. So I went to my eye doctor, and my eye doctor was like, yeah, you need to go home. And it was a Friday. She said, go home. Don't be left alone at all, and see your doctor immediately on Monday. And I did, and they ran all the tests, and I didn't have any brain damage or anything that they could see. Yeah, so that was fine. But that's how quickly, like really some signs started showing, and how quickly kind of things were starting to go downhill with me. And yes, looking back, I absolutely think that quitting smoking cannabis is what kind of made all these problems accumulate. They were always there, but I think they got worse.
But the cannabis was keeping the symptoms at bay, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, I found something similar with that. I always knew I had some sort of gastrointestinal issues. I dealt with it all my life. I took all types of medication growing up. My parents were anti-medicine, but I would try, things like Tums or different like heartburn medicine, things like that, just to try to get my gastrointestinal issues under control. As soon as I started smoking cannabis, I subconsciously stopped buying the Tums and the anti-heartburn medication, things like that. Cannabis was, taking care of those symptoms. It wasn't my intentions. It wasn't my goal, but it took a few months or maybe even a year until I realized that the cannabis is what was relieving the symptoms. So It's kind of funny how that happens. You may not intend to use it medicinally, but you do realize that it did have or does have medicinal value. No doubt.
That's something I've learned. Absolutely. Not just cannabis, but just so I have a condition called dysautonomia. Your autonomic nervous system is everything that your body does without thinking about it. Digestion, blood pressure, heart rate, pupil control. Interesting enough, that ultimately is what was causing my pupils that are two different sizes. Anyway, all those things that your body does, my system is failing at. And so when I was first diagnosed, the doctor that diagnosed me, we were talking and I was leaning up against a doorway. And he says, that's a symptom right there. He says people that shift their weight like that and that need to lean up against things, they're having oftentimes they're having blood pressure issues and their body is compensating. He says, do you ever sit with your feet flat on the floor? And I was like, no, absolutely not. When I'm in a restaurant, my feet are always tucked up underneath me. I always have my feet up. And he said, that's another symptom. So your body does know what it needs. I think there's a reason pregnant women crave weird foods because there's just certain things that their body needs at that moment. I think that some of us do tend to lean towards cannabis, which I think brings up a whole nother interesting topic to talk about. There are some negative effects of cannabis. I mean, as much as we want to think it's perfect, there's probably some things out there that aren't very good for us eventually. But I think that's one of the saddest things about prohibition is that we don't know about all of these things that we should know about because none of this research has been done yet. And that's where we're at today. That's not good for us.
And the research that has been done, a lot of the research that's commonly believed or accepted as truth is actually skewed data or, completely false information. One of the biggest things for me and something I used to argue all the time when I was anti-marijuana was it causes brain damage. It makes you stupid. That entire premise was built on a false claim from some research, back in, I want to say like the 60s. They hooked masks up to monkeys and pumped them full of so much smoke from joints, joint after joint after joint. And I wish I knew the exact numbers right now, and I don't. But ultimately, there was a loss of brain cells in the monkeys. And the scientists concluded that the THC from the cannabis or the cannabis itself caused the brain damage. They didn't release the full facts on, how that was tested until 60 years later. We're just now finding out that in reality, those monkeys, they had brain damage due to oxygen deprivation. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's like, what research can we even believe? We need to start from ground zero. We need to allow scientists access to this medicine, to this plant, so that we can research it in an unbiased, undiscriminating way.
Absolutely. And then that being said, we circle back around to the fact that everybody's body is going to react differently. And the whole indica, sativa, hybrid, couch, energy strain, we all react differently. And this is such a personal journey. And it's really, really hard to peg somebody in it's hard for somebody that wants to be in a hole, if they want that, they want that structure. They want a doctor to tell them or a bud tender to tell them this strain is going to do this for you. And maybe it does do that for 80% of the people, but it doesn't mean it's going to do that for you. It's a personal experience that you have to go through.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's going to come, like I say, with more research. I think we're going to be able to classify these plants and these flowers with much better indication of what they are and what they're going to do rather than indica, sativa, hybrid. As we start to isolate some of these cannabinoids, some of these lesser known cannabinoids, I think we'll realize that they have more of an impact along with the terpenes than the leaf structure that is said indica, sativa, hybrid. I think there's a lot more to be said about it.
I agree with you on that. And I think that that's like another big subject that I've learned that I would love to cover during the show, that I've learned in my own journey, is the extraction process and the different waxes and what they mean and what full spectrum is. And because I think that my personal belief is that there is no way to get back the full benefit once you extract that you had from that plant. But that doesn't mean that you're not getting a lot of really good benefit from that extraction. It's just not the same thing as the plant itself.
Definitely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Whole plant to me is the most medicinal form of cannabis, in my opinion. Smoking whole cannabis to me brings me the most relief from my symptoms. And like you said, you can reintroduce terpenes. You can try to reintroduce the cannabinoids that were extracted or separated during the extraction process, but it's not the same. It's not what nature has put together. So
for you, like the whole plant, and I hear whole plant, and I think that, but for me personally, I have actually found that the really high THC is the only thing that gets me to eat. I can't get enough of that high THC out of the plant, which is why before I was medical, before I got legal, that's why I was smoking just all day long, copious amounts, and buying and buying and buying and smoking and smoking and smoking. It was because I didn't know it then, but I wasn't getting enough to get me to eat. And so I kept doing more and more and more, hoping to eat. And now I don't have to use nearly as much because I have access to a punch of high THC. So again, this is what we deserve. This is what legal is about. It's about finding what your body needs and what you need and what
Absolutely.
your journey is. And we've been deprived of that for a long time, but we're going to turn that around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's coming soon. Free the flower. Rick Dos Santos has already said he's going to put the power back in the hands of the voters and give us what we voted for. And whole flower is part of it. Like I said, that works best for me, but if concentrates work best for you, some people find capsules work best for them. There's no way any one doctor or dispensary associate or nobody can really tell you what's going to work best for you. You have to go out and try it and see what works for you. And if we're limiting patients on what's available, then we're limiting them relief is ultimately what's happening, in my opinion.
I agree with you 100%. Things have not been set up to help us in any way, shape, or form. So, no. And I think that on the good side of that, to turn that into a positive, it's brought a community together. It's built friendships. It's built partnerships. It's, there's a lot of other people doing podcasts right now. They're doing YouTube videos. They're doing Instagram videos, Facebook Lives. They're doing all these social media things. And I think it's a really great way that we've all come together. And even if we have complete division and we have differences, we don't all agree on it, we're still reaching people and we're still trying to tell people like, this is okay. I think one of the biggest things that I want to do with this show is destigmatize cannabis. I want to somehow reach out to those people who aren't likely to listen to the show.
I agree.
Yeah. Let's bring in the people. Let's have some roundtable talks and some open-minded people from both sides of the fence.
Definitely. Yeah, I would love to find out what's holding them back or what's keeping them on the fence about the whole cannabis issue. I mean, like you said, destigmatizing it. I was just watching Netflix with my fiance last night, and, two professional men in business suits crack open a bottle of some sort of alcohol and pour it for each other, and it's considered classy. And I looked at her, I said, I want to live in a world where somebody right now is rolling a joint or hitting a bong and it's not taboo, it's not funny, it's not to be a stoner film or anything like that. It's just part of society. It's just part of what we do, because it is what we do, and it's time everybody accepts it and realizes it. So I think we need to destigmatize it to see that happen.
I think that it is shifting. I mean, there's no doubt it's shifting. And I think that the West Coast is seeing something that I've never experienced. So I've been out to the West Coast, but I wasn't in that world. I didn't go out there, and it wasn't during a time where it was legal. It was legal medicinally and stuff like that, but not like it is now. So I don't really have that full experience that like you've had, a taste of and everything. But I do see that shift. I do see that we are getting there. I'm guessing this has probably happened in other states as well, but I don't know anything about any of this stuff. And so I reached out to Facebook social groups because I didn't have any other access. At that point, I didn't even really understand that you could watch YouTube videos and learn a lot of this stuff. I was just starting to learn that, and I was trying to Google stuff, and I didn't even know what the names of things were because certain companies put their own name on it, and so I didn't know what that actual product was, and so I wasn't getting anything. I wasn't getting anything on Google because it didn't recognize what I was putting in there.
Can't Google Zen cannabis and find that strain. So I know what you mean. There's a lot of confusion. And it's built a really tight-knit community of people that have built social media pages and websites and things like that, gone out of their way to help educate each other where I feel like the state has kind of failed us. You go to the state website and it's so dry. It's so, old style text. It's not useful information that anybody's going to gain real knowledge and be able to use. We need people like myself, like yourself, and everyone else in the community who's out there and spreading this knowledge and educating each other. And like you said, that's all been brought upon because of the way it's been structured.
It's time for the review of the week with Strain Slayer critiquing the best medical cannabis Florida has to offer.
All right, so for today's strain review, we've got Birds of Paradise distillate from Grow Healthy. This came in a half-gram syringe. My batch was 75.5% THC. This is a sativa dominant hybrid. I prefer to dab this distillate. The terpene profile is very strong. Grow Healthy reintroduces the cannabis-derived terpenes back into their distillate, which is pretty unique for the cannabis market right now here in Florida. With that being said, it definitely increases the entourage effect. You definitely get a more euphoric buzz with the cannabis-derived terpenes being reintroduced. And the flavor and the smell is greatly increased. The Birds of Paradise, it smelled like very tropical, super pineapple-y with like sweet grape undertones. As far as the high with the Birds of Paradise, it's definitely sativa dominant, hits you right in the head as soon as you hit it. Very uplifting, very euphoric, energetic, but it's also one of the best strains out there for inflammation, so it makes it great for gastrointestinal issues, anxiety, all types of issues, all types of ailments. So as I said, the Birds of Paradise does lean sativa dominant, but with the Blue Heron being one of its parent strains, you definitely can feel the body numbing effects across the board. It's definitely mind and body relaxing, but euphoric at the same time. As counterintuitive as that sounds, that's the only way I could explain it. It was very relaxing, but mentally invigorating, euphoric, extremely tasty. With that strain, I will make the bold statement that Grow Healthy currently holds my personal favorite spot for distillate right now in the state of Florida. You just can't beat those cannabis-derived, terpenes. So it's nice to have something that's strain-specific in distillate and still full flavor. So big shout out to Grow Healthy. I will definitely be reviewing some new strains in the future. For now, I'm just chilling in a hammock on Paradise. Thanks, Grow Healthy.
So you've been around for at least a few months that I've seen as Strain Slayer, and mostly what I have seen has been the Strain Slayer reviews. And so what made you start to do that, and how's that journey been for you?
So I've always just kind of been opinionated my whole life. So I think it was just kind of meant to be. I like to let people know what I think about things. When it came to cannabis, I felt like it wasn't just my opinion. I felt like I actually had some good knowledge to share. You know what I mean? So all joking aside, it really was more so about getting the information out there in an unbiased fashion. There's a lot of people who are paid sponsors for this company or that company. You don't really know who's advertising for what or where anybody's loyalty lies. So it was important to me to be a voice for patients, completely unbiased, letting people know where they can get different medications, what they can expect from the medications. And a big part of it was to kind of bridge the gap from smoke shop to dispensary. There's information that dispensaries can't say. There's stuff that the smoke shops can't say. I wanted to bridge that gap and just kind of teach people how to use these different glass devices or pens and, vaporizers and things like that. The smoke shops are very vague about how to use them, like I said. And so... Even
with legal patients, that's so sad. Even I guess I went into a smoke shop initially with the idea that I was going to be like, oh, hey, I'm a legal patient, so you can help me. And no,
not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I walked in there and they know I work in a dispensary, and I still say the wrong thing sometimes. And they kind of look at me like, hey, you can't say that. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. All day long I'm sitting there selling cannabis to people and telling them how to go home and use it. And you still have to watch what you're saying in certain places. So again, just kind of wanted to bridge that gap and just inform patients how to use their medication in the most beneficial and cost-effective way possible.
And you're really in tune with your body and mind, where I just kind of use and I get my relief, like, my heart rate comes up, and so I can like think, because there's blood going to my brain again, because that is one of the things that I need cannabis for. But I don't feel like all these different little things that a lot of people do feel. But that's one of the things I think makes you really good with the reviews, is that you are very in tune with how it is actually affecting different aspects of your body.
Yeah, I've tried to focus on that, and using cannabis with meditation is one thing that really kind of opened my eyes to the differences in cannabis. When you meditate and you use an indica versus a sativa, you can really feel the difference. And not to go into that too much, but I really do, as a reviewer, if you will, I try to sit down and I try to block out all my outside senses and really just take in the full experience of the cannabis and the smell, the taste, the consistency. I might go a little extra with it sometimes for some people, but for me, I want to really, take in the full experience and really try to see how my body is affected by the different types of medicine available.
Well, awesome. I think you're kicking ass. I love your new bags that you put out. I think that's really awesome. I love you doing the beach cleanups every month for a year. I hope that works out. That's a lot of commitment, and I think you have it. I think you have exactly what it takes, and I think it's an awesome thing that you're giving back to all of the community, not just the cannabis community, but all of the state of Florida. I mean, what a great thing that you're doing. I love it.
Thank you very much. And I couldn't do any of this, obviously, without the support that Instagram and Facebook and, obviously the people that I'm meeting every day have shown me. So thank you guys, obviously. Everyone showed me a lot of love. So,
well, that being said, where can people that don't know you yet find you?
You can catch me on www.strainslayer.com. I started up the website so nobody could edit my information. You can also find me on Instagram @StrainSlayer, one word. And also on Facebook, there's a private group. It's Strain Slayer, and in parentheses, Florida Medical Marijuana Reviews. Just send me an invite on there. I'll make sure to get you into the group. And again, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course, of course.
So you were mentioning to me earlier, that you had larger intentions, obviously, other than just this podcast, which is great. We're going to reach a lot of patients, but you had your own ideas and some other ways of reaching out to patients and some other things you'd like to do in the community. So
I want to take a very fun approach, and not necessarily just patients. I want to have a lot of fun with this idea. So when I first started this, my initial goal was to do something like a Dear Abby style advice blog, and so I came up with Ask Blunt Betty. And so when I say when I have my Instagram and my website, that's why the Ask Blunt Betty. And so what I am hoping is that you guys out there will get to know me a little bit and will feel comfortable to come to me and ask me your questions, those cannabis related questions. My girlfriend's smoking all my stash and it's pissing me off, or whatever it is, how do I clean this? Whatever, the etiquette of cannabis and those fun things, and even if it's serious, we can talk about those things too. I have been married for 25 years, as I said, and, I've had the ups and downs of marriage. I've raised a child. I've been through teenage years. I've had interesting jobs. I've done things from a merc girl for a clown. I traveled with a clown and I sold his merchandise.
Interesting.
Absolutely. He even let me dress up one time and I was Freckles, the clown, because I do have freckles.
Might have to get Freckles on the show sometime.
Yeah, that was a one-time experience, so I don't know about that. But I mean, as I said, I worked for the airlines. I'm a office manager for a chiropractor. I mean, I just do interesting things with my life, and I want to share those experiences and touch people. to be able to get back into writing too. I was a journalist when I was in school. It was just it was a side thing. It wasn't anything that I did on a serious level, but I did want to do that when I grew up at one point, and I didn't follow that, but I really enjoy writing, and I want to get back to that level to where I'm writing again. I would love if you guys could reach out to me. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on www.askbluntbetty.com. Most of the links there are anonymous, so you can send me an anonymous message, and please link up your email to that if you would like for me to reach out to you. I would also like to eventually feature a letter in a segment on the show. So if you have some great story you want to share with me that's just worthy of everybody out there listening, send me your letters, tell me your stories. I want to hear them. I can be found on Instagram at askbluntbetty.com and Facebook. I have a page there, and it's under Betty Blunt is my name there, but Ask Blunt Betty is the page on Facebook as well.
Cool. So your Instagram is Ask Blunt Betty, one word?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have a lot of stuff about us that we've talked about, and I look forward to not talking about us in the future and talking to other people and, and talking about some more, maybe technical things and, some things. But I think this was a great experience, us getting to know each other a little bit better and letting our listeners get to know us a little bit better.
Yeah, good introduction for sure, and just kind of letting people know what our message is, what we're looking to do, and, just our background. So I think that was important, but I'm definitely excited to start talking to some other patients, some newer patients, and, just some people that have questions. Like you said, I'm excited what you're doing with your Ask Blunt Betty. It's really nice that people have an anonymous way to reach out to somebody with so much experience and get some questions answered. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and I'm excited to get some guests on here on the show. So.
And if you want to reach out to us, we've each individually told you where you can find us, but we are also all over social media, and our website is www.candidcannabisconversations.com. That's where you can find us. Thank you for listening. I really hope you join us on the next episode, that you continue to listen, and I look forward to getting to know all of you.
I'm definitely excited. So thanks for listening to episode 1. I look forward to meeting you guys in the future and uncovering some more of the mystery of medical marijuana.
Thank you for listening to Candid Cannabis Conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave us a review on Google Play and iTunes. Blunt Betty and Strain Slayer can be found on all the popular social media outlets, as well as CandidCannabisConversations.com. Again, we appreciate you following us and look forward to you joining us for the next episode.